For me? Where does it go? What happens? I'm sorry?
It went to the health insurance. That's the reason why we did the addition, well, you approved the additional appropriation and went to the town. It was split between the town and the board. I think
Right,
Anna
but that-
allocated it.
That wasn't the entire 600,
It was.
right?
300, wasn't it 394?
394 was the board's portion, and I believe I don't remember the town's portion, but that's where it was allocated.
So what about the other 200? Where will that go?
It goes to so our budget is 47 million and change. We get 5.8 or 6 million. It goes to offset our budget. We don't, the amount of
So-
the ECS money is part of our education budget. It goes to offset our education budget of 47 million. I'm not sure I'm following.
Right, so if you're getting excess funds that you didn't count on, where does that sit? It doesn't get returned to the town.
No,
So-
the ECS money, it goes directly to the town. We don't get it.
Yeah, this is a revenue item.
We don't keep I think there's excess cost, which is what we get, and it offsets our budget. And then there's the education cost sharing grant. That goes directly to the town. It doesn't come to us.
Okay, so it does get returned to the
Yes,
town?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
All that goes to the town.
yes.
And what was the rationale for budgeting 6,292,000 for the ECS this coming year?
Excess cost, 6 million. What'd you say, 6 million for?
So we're
I
getting
budgeted-
6,449,000 this year, and I
Mhm.
think you budgeted next year 6,292,000.
I included 5,768,000 in my budget. That was the governor's proposed. I think you're looking at the town's revenue?
Yes.
Are you looking at
I'm
our?
not looking at, I'm looking at this projected revenue sheet.
That's not my sheet.
Yeah, and I think.
That's not my sheet.
And I do think that Anna gave us a revised
Yeah. Yes. She
revenue
called me
sheet
today and said she was
and-
revising that
Oh,
number.
the one that was in the
Yes.
green folders?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
I'm
that-
looking
and
at
that's-
old data.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's correct, you're correct.
If you look at at the revenue sheet,
Yeah.
that's the governor's proposed.
5.768.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am looking at next the tuition from Salem going up next year to 3,050,000.
Additional students.
Yeah, there's double, so this year they only had one 8th grade class coming, about 30 students. Next year, the projection is approximately 60 students so they have 2 classes.
We're going from 30 high school students from Salem to 60.
I think. Yes, I think so.
I'm sure if I look back at my records, I'll come up with that formula or that
It's
calculation.
on the next page,
25 and 28.
on page 25 of 28.
Just a breakdown of the numbers.
Because included in that, there are some other, included in that tuition of 3,050,000, there are some other students that pay tuition to us. So it's not obviously a bulk of it is Salem tuition, but there are other students. We currently have, I believe, 2 students at our Coastal Connections, and then we have some other students that pay tuition.
We have, I believe there's upwards of 6 right now, 5 or 6 that pay tuition to come from another town because they want to come to school in East Lyme. And that money goes right to the town. It's all tuition.
So I'm trying to look at big picture here and just make some generalized statements and tell me if I'm on target or not. So if Salem students coming into the high school is doubling next year from 30 to 60, then our town's population in the high school is going down considerably more than that, right? Because if we look at the fiscal year ending in 19, we have 1,032 high school students, and fiscal year ending in 2020 is 1,040. So that's an increase, an overall increase of 8 students?
And that's the high side.
That enrollment, though, includes the Salem students.
Right.
Okay.
So if we're increasing our population by 30 Salem students, but we're only increasing the overall population by 8, that means we're losing a lot of East Lyme High School
Well,
students,
not-
right?
There's also a senior class that's leaving as well,
Yeah,
so
you've
I'm
got
not
a
sure.
Larger or a smaller senior class that would
Well,
be
right, but the
excellent.
bottom line is there's
Yeah.
fewer East Lyme kids.
Exactly.
in the
And
high
we don't
school
know how many
because there's more
kindergarten
Salem
kids are
kids.
coming in either. We haven't calculated that out here because we don't have that number yet. So you got an exit and you got an entry
Mhm.
as well.
Okay. I'm going to assume my statement is correct. Would you say, Lisa?
I would.
You follow
with
me?
that
You
part,
follow me,
yeah.
Bill?
You're
Does that make-
saying plus 30 for Salem, a plus 8 total means we're losing
We're
22
losing
East
East
Lyme.
Lyme, we're losing East Lyme
22
kids.
East Limers, yeah.
So that should be more beneficial to our bottom line.
You should be gaining more, gain more money from Salem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
it's
the ones that pay
a higher revenue coming in.
So our cost per educated
What's that?
student should be going up because Salem pays us more, Salem pays us the same as
No,
our
they-
costs.
They pay us, it's the same, it goes up 5%, it's 5% a year.
Yes, there's a calculation involved in
Which is
the Salem tuition. It goes up each year, but then there's a reconciliation factor and so on each year. So, and then that tuition is adjusted up or down depending on whether they've overpaid us or underpaid us.
Okay, I'm going to end with a just generalized statement. I just received these books this evening, so I haven't dug into them in any detail. But I'm sure to do that, and when we come back and start voting on the budgets, I will provide more of a rationale of where I get to. But generally, I would like you all to understand that when I look at the budget this year, it's not that I doubt that you don't need 3 to 5% of an increase to get the product that you want to generate, but I'm looking at a different set of numbers. And I don't doubt the expense side of the budget, but as we've gone through the past couple of years, we always have this big cloud on the revenue side. So last year, our overall budget increased by 1.3%, something like that. Does that make sense, Mark? 1.3? Give or take. But what that translates into last year was a 4.5% increase in the mill rate. So now I'm looking at almost a 4% increase in our budget this year, and I'm worried, what does that translate into the mill rate when we go down that road? If it's a multiplier of 3, does that mean we're looking at a 10 to 12% increase in taxes? So I want to be very clear in that I understand, and I would like to support what you're trying to do for the Board of Ed, but when I get to the big picture, I don't have high expectations of being able to meet this budget, and it's for that reason. So I hope you follow my logic there.
Yeah, and you're factoring in the money come into the town, grand list up, and all that's, you're factoring all that in as well?
Yes, and I'm glad that you raised the grand list, because 2 meetings ago when I was here, I had asked our finance director, Anna, for a breakdown of the revenue from the grand list that we get. What percentage of it is based on the residential base? What percentage is based on the commercial base? What percentage is based on new business or new residents coming into town? If we're not bringing in, pardon my voice, I'm getting cold. If we're not bringing in new business yet, or extra families coming in, then that means the additional increase needs to be absorbed by those individuals remaining. So I will have a better idea of what we'll be able to pass on to the taxpayers once I understand what makes up that grand list. I know just right off the bat, we're losing 40 grand in tax revenues from Honeywell. That's becoming a town property. We're gonna lose that revenue right off the bat. So if there's no new business coming in that can supplant that tax revenue, that means those individuals left here have to absorb that 40,000. If Costco isn't coming in until 2020 now, and we're not gonna get the full benefit of their tax revenues, that's something that needs to be considered as well. So I hear you in that, it's sad that you're not able to implement any new initiatives, but that's not going to be the case forever. So if it doesn't happen this year, just keep trying, and sooner or later, hopefully, things will improve and you'll get to go down that road. But I'm not too optimistic this year again. And I just wanted to leave that thought with you.
Because when you add in debt services, it gets even worse.
Okay, that's it for
Okay.
now.
Lisa?
Thanks. Good evening, folks. First, I attended some of the Board of Ed workshop meetings, so I got to see firsthand how the budget is put together. And thanks to the Board of Ed, I can see there's a lot of work, there's a lot of exasperation in trying to create something for our kids with not enough dollars. So my hat is off to all of you on the Board of Ed. Thanks for your service to our town. And thanks for inviting the Board of Finance to participate and see a little bit more of how it's done. I hate to say it, but since Camille just pointed it out, I'm a little bit in the same camp with that. Just big picture, I'm concerned about our taxes as well. And we haven't talked about it yet, but we all know that pretty soon we're going to be bearing the burden of partial teacher pensions in the municipalities, and it's not a pretty look ahead. So please understand that when we talk about these things, well, I think everybody understands we're in a very tight spot here. But some of the details of questions I'd like to ask, and I hope you'll forgive me, but they're gonna be a little disjointed because I went through this budget book and highlighted some questions, and then when we went through the presentation, I had some questions. Some of the topics were the same, but I was really unable to compile them in a uniform way. So if I'm jumping around, please forgive me for that. So the first item, I'm just gonna start in the beginning of the book. Two pieces of information that we didn't receive unless I missed them. But I would have really appreciated having some data on personnel trends. Would have been nice to see trends of admin people from the previous year. You've provided that in the past. Teachers, admin, paras, so that we can see overall the trend of personnel. You talked specifically about some numbers going down, but a zoom out on maybe the last 4 or 5 years of the trend in personnel would be very helpful to me, and I'm guessing it would to my colleagues as well. Another piece of information that would have been helpful, and I keep thinking it's here. Visually, it's nice to see, like the pie chart you used to put out, what % of the budget is health costs. The numbers are here. Just that one visual diagram for me is helpful. And just a silly little comment. Tabs are nice on this thing, so you can flip to the sections on them. Just,
They're more expensive.
Okay. Well, there's not that many budget books. There can't be that many budget books, but that's okay.
There's 50.
All right, so back to healthcare. So healthcare. And ask this question first, and I'm going to continue with her thinking. I saw you take some notes, Jeff. You said it was an important question. But I want to go back to incentivizing folks to consider taking the insurance of their spouses. I mean, I know where I used to work, they used to give lump sums of money to employees if they consider, because a lot of times their spouses use insurance. And I'd like you to consider working with that, because I think that can save us a ton of money. And I'm not really seeing a lot of effort currently put into that. I'd like you to consider putting more into that. I'd also like to consider some kind of and these are just things off the top of my head as a layperson, it's not my area of expertise, but I don't know if we ask our Board of Ed, or our employees to have a mandatory leap to Medicare when they get to be 65. I have a feeling we don't. I don't know what our contracts are.
I don't think that's legal, is it?
We were told in the past it wasn't legal.
Yeah, it's illegal.
Sure it is. Okay. I mean, I believe you. I'm not saying you're misinforming me. It's just like, okay. So I mean, I don't know if we can roll up our sleeves anymore programmatically on healthcare. Just so, I don't know if there's credits for well incentives. You're probably already doing some of those things.
Yep, we have a wellness.
And I don't want to drill down too deeply into that, but because that's such a huge cost, I'm asking you to roll your sleeves up on that a little bit. Maybe talk to other school districts, other professionals in the field, and see if there's some way that we can realize some gains in that cost bucket. So that's one comment there. So let's look at page 1. We talked about transportation a little bit. I don't know if I have much to add on that, but the cost of fuel is down. What's the basis for First Student Bus Company's bid being so much higher?
Are you in the major budget?
I'm in the detail right here, page
It's
1,
Included,
this book.
Yeah.
that,
The bottom line, transportation.
That
How do
number-
they justify if we're,
no, so that number includes an increase in special ed transportation, not entirely for students increase.
you did say that.
So it,
I'm sorry, you
Yeah.
did say that.
Yeah, Mariana or Jeff, didn't you just say for one of those, for a special student that needs outplacement, roughly how much is the cost for transportation for one student?
Yeah, for a year, it could be 30 to 50,000,
Mhm.
depending on, where they're going in the state.
Okay, so that's really largely where that is. Now, so let's talk about, I think we said something in here about out-of-district place students. That's special ed, it's not kids that want to go to the science and magnet school.
Totally separate.
Do we pay transportation for kids that want to go to the science and magnet school?
Currently, we do, but we get some reimbursement from the state.
So we're not mandated to pay for that, I don't believe.
No, we're not.
So have we considered giving our parents a nice loving hug and saying, we'd love to do more for you, but we really can't right now? Is that something we've considered?
It's something we're definitely looking at. We have done a lot of work to consolidate more stops, where I think parents years back had an opportunity to have stops for magnet school pickups that were closer. A lot of work in consolidating, say, here's the one stop that you can come drop your child off at, and that's where the bus will be.
How much do we spend for those students in transportation that are not special ed, that are out of district?
For magnet school, or you're talking?
Any school. I don't care. I understand we are obligated to pay for special ed transportation. But I heard you just say, if I heard you correctly, we're not mandated to pay for students that wish to go to other schools.
Yeah.
So magnet school?
There's one bus.
there,
Well, like, there's got to be the
There's-
voc ed
so-
school, right, in Ledger,
if
there's
you're talking to-
Science
So-
and Magnet, there's St. Bernard's, there's all that, right?
There's 3 runs, there's various schools consolidated. The cost and we get reimbursed from the state. So we're paying roughly for magnet school transportation $60,000 to $70,000, I believe. The state offsets that with a grant. I believe last year we received $47,600, $45,600.
Okay.
So the net is approximately $30,000 to $40,000.
Still 30,000, but I mean, I don't know if there's, again, some way we can look at that.
We definitely are. I think it's part of the governor's proposal, I thought, where you might be eliminating that reimbursement back to if that's the case, for sure,
I mean, we can't sustain
Yeah,
that.
exactly. That's something we'd be looking at. Yep, and we've already started.
Are you pretty comfortable with that number of 30,000 that it costs us? I know I'm asking you right off the cuff here, so.
Yes, I'm fairly comfortable. I will double check. I lost my connection right now, but I
Oh.
have the worksheet.
Okay.
So.
Repairs and maintenance, same page. Last year was quite a bit less, and I know you're re-bucketing some things. I understand that. Just help me understand what's going on there. 21.5% increase. So you said something about previously budgeted and contracted
So,
services.
Lisa, if you go to the page 2 down at the bottom.
Yeah.
I tried to do an allocation where they reclassified certain items to make it more appropriate to what they actually were versus leaving. So for example, you'll see an increase in preventive maintenance, you see an increase in ground supplies, those are large amounts. However, there's a decrease for maintenance and contracted services of 151 because we've reallocated those costs to either the preventive maintenance account or the ground supplies because it more appropriately reflected there versus in contracted services.
So would I be correct in saying instead of going up the 85,433, if I subtract the 16,700 from that, that's really what the increase is?
For our well, yes, for the which one? Oh, the repairs and maintenance line.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
the basis for that significant increase, because even if you take out the 16,700, it's still kind of a big chunk that it's gone up, and I just want to understand the nature of it.
Because it got moved, yeah. Then it get moved from the contracted services.
Yeah,
The 151
into
decreased, went into repairs and
433.
maintenance, hence kicking up repairs and maintenance upward to
Which is-
85,000.
I don't follow what you just said, I'm sorry.
So if you look on page 4,
Mhm.
Lisa. So you'll see right at the top, object code 431. I mean, there's obviously some other
Four-
items.
Oh, 431,
For the
okay.
top one, 431.
yep.
So there's other items that make up that 85,000 increase but the bulk of it is obviously that 74,000. So that has been, and then if we go to, again, my apologies for going back
Okay.
and forth.
I understand what
Okay.
you just said,
Right,
but what's the basis of that?
of reallocating.
No, I understand that you did it, I don't,
Okay.
it doesn't matter to me where you count it, I'm just
Sure.
saying $75,000 is a lot of money to increase preventive maintenance, I'm just trying to understand, what are we doing?
But we're not actually increasing, so there were preventive maintenance items that were budgeted in contracted services, which
Yeah.
didn't make sense to.
In the wrong spot.
They're in the wrong spot. So we're
Okay.
just moving it. We're not adding $74,000 worth of preventive maintenance costs. They were budgeted somewhere else. So they're,
Not to the
Oh.
appropriate line item where they should be.
Okay.
Under repairs and maintenance. That's why you see that, the increase of 85.
I'll move on.
But
Text-
just, if I could follow on that, but the contracted services doesn't have a line item that went down equivalent.
Right.
because of, included
Thank
in
you.
those line items is technology. So there's a budget by location in the back that will break it down a little bit further, but included in 330 is maintenance, it's technology. There's a chunk of other expenses in there, and I think as we had explained in one of the slides, technology, we're adding, I think, 115,000 to the contracted services line to allow for July and August services.
It's too hard to,
We've had this conversation in the
Yeah, it's-
past, not specifically with the Board of Ed. I think last time it was Parks and Rec or something. When you move money from one account to the other account, it'd be nice if we saw a line item that said we subtracted 85,000 from this area and we added it over there, just to give us a holistic view of pluses and minuses, so we don't have to
yeah, it's
flick
too hard
back
to
and
follow
forth
right now, and I
between-
don't wanna go down, I already went down the rabbit hole too far, so I'm just gonna put it in the, I'm incomplete box.
I guess we tried to do that with that breakdown on page 2
That
on the
was-
bottom,
yeah,
but
that was
you're saying you needed a little bit.
We didn't
cleaner,
connect.
I guess.
Yeah, that was tricky.
It's just in
Okay.
that there, it
That was
does. It
tricky.
shows that overall the three accounts decreased by 16,000.
Gotcha.
It shows one line item that added 85,000, it just doesn't show
Well, plus,
another
we'd have to know what your
subtracted.
thinking was for all of that to make sense, and,
Just
too,
a-
yeah, it's
just-
too hard to
just
do
trying
when
make
you're
an
sitting up
algebra
here.
equation that has equal on both sides, you know.
All right, page 2, textbooks and software. So this is up 52% in 2 years, because I looked it up in last year's budget, and it was 386,074, and now we're looking at 585,641. Increase in textbooks and software. You really gotta help me out with this. Are we really buying textbooks like that much?
No, the textbooks was a smaller amount. It's the software.
52% in 2 years? Help me out more.
Where all of our, software components with,
What kind of software?
with,
So we implemented a math program 2 years ago, and part of that math program is we have a software that goes along with it, as well as the actual consumables, as well for the math program. We also, in the curriculum revision cycle, we choose at times a primary source to be used as part of curriculum revision, so we have to purchase those. We also implement literacy-based software across the district as well. So we utilize that software so that there's a consistent elementary to middle exchange and program. So we implement those software. So those are things that I, when I contracted with and negotiated, I try to bundle it for, give me 2
Right.
years for this good deal, give me the third year free. So some of those are up for renewal, as well as things that we're implementing across the district.
Okay. A lot of money. So equipment. I don't even know what this is on page 2. As part of the budget deliberation, some equipment was requested or cut. I don't know what it is, and what you used to track here, I think, was some kind of athletic equipment,
No.
which isn't here now. But what is this? I'm happy to see it's down, but what is it? I know you snuck it in somewhere else,
I know.
but what is it?
It's instructional equipment, so it's not, it's computers, iPads.
It's technology.
It's technology.
So that's not under a technology item here. I'm just trying to,
Well, it's by object code, so
Okay.
account code. So equipment encompassed in this equipment line are multiple different lines. It's technology. There was furniture that was requested that was cut. There were multiple iPads, computers, laptop carts.
okay,
So
Yeah, which is we reduced.
all right. On page 3, this seems like a silly little item, but line 211. Why does it say that it went up 100%? I don't even know what it is. Retirement ERIP.
I think that's,
no, that's just
State.
So the reason I'm asking the question,
That's a formula, sorry.
right, and the only reason that I asked it is because I was saying, if that formula, you know how Excel is, right? Copy paste. Are there other percentages that might be off? And I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I also don't know what it is. Retirement ERIP.
Oh, the retirement plan, we did a few years back with our teachers, our certified teachers. That's part of the state, we pay back to the state. This is the last year of that.
What are we paying them back for?
We did the early retirement plan, I think it was 2 years ago now, for teachers, certified teachers. We were able to drew back all of their sick time that they would have been paid out for. We used that to offset the cost of giving them additional time in TRB to retire early. And we netted about 16 or 17 staff members that retired off of that.
Is that still part of our early retirement package?
No, there's a one-time deal.
Other
So
professional
That
tech
will be zero
services.
next year.
What's that?
I just wanted to clarify that line item will be zero next year.
Yes, it will.
Line item 330, other professional tech services, went up 14%. Off the top of your head, do you know what that is?
Yeah, that's approximately 115 is the technology, our contract for the technology services that we talked about
10 to 12 months in the summer. It's the summertime.
is the summer, and then
Okay. Guess we talked about textbooks. Ground supplies are up 136%. What's that all about?
that's part of that reclassification,
Moved
Part of that
from-
the
Contract
maintenance
services line item.
reclassification.
So, there's a note here on page 6. The increase at Niantic Center and the decrease at Flanders is mainly due to the reassignment of staffing from Flanders to Niantic. We alluded to this a little bit earlier. So, we decreased 188,000 at Flanders, and we increased 331 at Niantic.
Yeah, you got close to 80 to 100 kids going over to Niantic Center. Less it, that number is decreasing at Flanders. You got to move staff around.
No, I understand it, but it's not a wash. Like, we didn't lose the same amount of Flanders that we gained at Niantic. Is my question clear?
No.
Yes, no,
Sounds
I
good.
know, I have here, I will look at that and I'll get back to you, because I believe it has to do with, there were a few retirements at Flanders School as well, so.
It's quite a bit of money though, right?
Yeah.
It's almost double what that line item is, so I'd be grateful for a follow-up on that.
And so 291 is what, 258 is the salary differential. There's other components, obviously, that go into that increase, because there's increased students, there's increase in supplies, and increase in other things. But the salary component is
Right.
258. Just,
But you understand my question?
yes, I do.
All right, so you're gonna get back to me on that.
Yes.
So certified salaries, we just talked about, right? That's up 7.61%. What was our reasoning for that? Oh, yeah, you, was that for,
Sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
certified salaries on page 7 are up 7.61%. And that, we talked about earlier, I think, under the 9-point-something% increase in salary, that it's not gonna really be that much or something.
Yeah, because the 25,728?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're looking at?
Yes, I am.
That's, we increased one of the certified teachers from creative. We swapped, she was initially.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
There was additional, there's a certified teacher that is working .5 currently in creative, .3 in integrated preschool. We have swapped that, so now next year she will be working .5 for integrated preschool and .3 at creative preschool. So there's an increase of .2.
Oh, okay. Now, you
FTE
just,
and salary, obviously the contractual salary increases there.
you said something earlier when Ann asked you about that. You said one of those is not captured in your budget. Is it creative play school?
Creative is not part of it. Correct.
So you don't capture their revenue or their expense? That's
Not in our budget.
So whose budget is that?
It's a revenue budget. It's the dollars that come in from parents and the dollars that go out to cover the cost of staffing and
Right,
supplies.
but the staffing that runs that, you don't capture that in your budget here?
No, it's not separate. It's a revenue.
It's a separate fund.
Right, but somebody has to maintain that, right, to make
We do.
sure
Yeah.
you do?
We do, it's a separate fund.
But
It's a
it's not in
special
this
revenue
budget.
fund. It is
Okay.
not part of the operating budget of
So the
district.
integrative play school is part of the budget?
Preschool.
Preschool,
Correct.
sorry. It's
Correct,
been a
yeah.
while. Okay. So can you tell me again how many teachers, how much staff you're reducing at the high school?
Three certified staff members at the high school.
3. Okay, and the middle school?
1 certified staff member at the middle school.
1. And how many?
Slide 9 has the full breakdown for you. And the PowerPoint?
Right.
It's got, yeah.
Slide 9,
Yep,
right?
slide 9's got the total staff and total savings.
And how many security personnel are currently in the high school?
3.
Is that a new number, though? You moved up to 3.
Now, at the
Did I
high
hear you right?
school, we increased a little bit of time because we have a early morning program, PE program that starts at 6:30. So we increased a little bit of time, but it's 3 full-time security staff
Okay,
members.
are you looking to amp
The
that up?
middle school.
You're
We're looking to
amp
add
up
at
the
one.
middle school.
We're going to add at the middle school. Yeah, because you've got just over 1,000 kids at the high school with 3. You've got just over 800 students at the middle school with 1. So we're looking to increase a little bit of staffing at the middle school level to provide additional support.
So how much is their enrollment going down again? It's too much information.
Not
for
by
me here.
much. Figuring out, I think the lowest they get is 750 roughly.
Right, but the trend in the middle school,
It's not changing dramatically, not changing enough
Actually, it
to
is,
warrant.
isn't it?
No, it's the
Minus
lowest it
40.
would be is 752, and they're at 800, just over 800 right now.
Mhm.
And it starts to climb.
Do you have past projections for student enrollment that you're able to verify with actual data just to ensure how accurate these projections are?
I think that's the slide that we showed you, it goes back to 2013, all in, overall enrollment.
How accurate, though, is that? What I'm looking for is their projection versus the real data. You know what I mean?
You're not following what, this is right from Malone.
All right, what slide are you talking about?
The most accurate data we have, slide 11,
Slide 11
yeah, all in from Malone McBroom,
and 13.
added up in addition to pre-K and the 18 to 21-year-old population.
Right, but that's giving you actual data, right? It's
Yes.
giving you actual data from 13 to 18. It doesn't tell us what the projections were. So I'm trying to understand,
She's asking if we have are
How
you asking
accurate?
if we have previous projections?
right, like you have projections now going outward. You're gonna stick them in your drawer somewhere because you're good, smart people, and
Back
Yeah,
in the
the-
first analysis that Malone and Broom did for us, which was back in 2016, 17, I think.
that's the first time we've used a
That was the first
professional?
time we used
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And before that was, it was NESDEC.
We use NESDEC.
And you could go back and you could look at the NESDEC data as well.
I wouldn't trust the numbers.
Yeah,
though.
that's irrelevant.
That's why we did a full
Okay,
comprehensive
so
study.
you don't trust NESDEC, but you do trust Maloney and Mahoy.
Malone and McBroom, absolutely.
Okay, so they gave you projections for 16, 17.
And moving forward.
This is actual data, though.
Yes, that's right.
I'm looking for
That-
projections from that.
Yeah, you want, yeah.
It would be useful to see how the accurate data measures against the projections. Am I being clear?
I think from memory, I can tell you they were way off. I can tell you that the NASDAQ numbers had us at, if my memory serves me correctly, back up to 3,200 by this year,
Yeah,
and it was wrong.
we'll go back and take a look and dig up what we have.
Right, but you
We're
understand
going
why that's
to-
important.
So Lisa's not needling you guys, she's making a valid point in that because past projections never really materialized to be accurate, how do we trust these numbers from this new estimating firm? I mean, it's,
I think it's what was done, the work that was done and was involved.
I mean, what else can you do?
all
ju-
right, well, how about this? Can you share with us the logic behind why they think we're gonna go from 2,700 to 3,200 in less than 10 years? Like, what were the major
We can give you the
factors?
whole, the whole
The whole
PowerPoint.
package, yeah.
Okay.
We'll give you the whole document.
I'm just looking at it from a data standpoint. I always like to keep old data, right? And then you can go back and look and say, did the actuals measure up to the
You're not
projections?
comparing apples to
Yeah.
apples, though. You're comparing apples to oranges.
So-
Okay, so I accept that you don't support NASDAQ for whatever reason, you're not using them anywhere. But you do have 2 years of projections from Mike and Med Dog. I can't remember their
Malone
names.
and McBroom.
What's their names?
Malone and
Yeah,
McBroom.
Yeah.
I can't,
M&M.
from
So-
M&M.
M&M, yeah, call them M&M.
You do have 2 projection years from them,
They-
back in 16 and 17.
We have to go back and look at it.
So I just want to know how accurate they were. That's all. I'm
So-
not,
I got it.
because that helps us understand with some accuracy what we're looking
Yeah.
at going forward.
It's the
So-
same question we asked during the grade school project, is you had data that was different than the previous data, and we asked you to overlay one on top of the other to see what's the accuracy of the trend data, right? I mean, it's easy every year to plot a new plot, and if you don't overlay it to last year, you've got a solid line for actuals, you don't have the projections there.
Mhm.
If you had the actuals and the projections side by side, it would tell you the accuracy of the data.
Mm.
So, oh, go ahead, Ann.
I was just thinking that, maybe what we need to look at is the information that Malone and McBroom has given you about the accuracy of their figures for the past number of years with other school districts, for example, if they've done this before.
Nice.
Well, I mean, we really don't, it's irrelevant to some extent, what happened with another firm. You have the data right now projecting forward from Malone and McBroom for the schools of East Lyme. So if they've done that for another district recently, I mean, at some meetings that we went to, workshops, whatever, I recall you saying that they had a good reputation for accuracy, and you've repeated that again here this evening. So if they could, just a little information in that regard, I think would probably help out, because what's happened in the past, obviously there was some issue with the previous, firm that gave information about school enrollment projections, and this doesn't seem to be the case based upon what you're understanding of their reputation
Yeah.
and the data that they have given
Yeah.
you. They may have given it in a qualification statement or something.
Exactly, it
So,
wasn't even a firm that.
yeah, so
that-
maybe
that
just an
said-
assurance about that, that we're, you know, that there's something to back up your conclusion there would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you're gonna get back to us
We can look at that.
with that, is
So-
that correct?
So if I-
If you tell me that their data was 80% accurate,
Okay.
then I'm gonna look at the data you're giving me, and I'm gonna have 80% level of comfort with it. If you tell me it was 100% accurate,
I think that's why they show a low, medium, and a high.
that's just a projection, though. That doesn't tell me what past, it's like the stock market, right? Past performance does not indicate future performance, or we wouldn't be here.
Okay,
So you don't know what their accuracy has been basically with other districts?
yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Okay.
I wanna know if they said in 2015, that in 2016 and 17, if the chalk line is snapped in 2015, and they said, we predict next year you're gonna have 3,500 students, I'm just picking a number out.
Yeah,
And then
were they
2016
spot
came,
on?
how close were they? Did they hit their target or not?
And that's where it's all the birth rate data that we look at.
That's okay, I understand that it is, but I wanna
Well,
have some idea of their accuracy.
So if I could just add to this conversation, there was slightly more than just birth rate data. They took into consideration
Yeah.
the build-out of the orchards
Uh,
and the occupancy of the apartments that are going in. So these numbers were given to you at a static point in time. They're not constantly revisited. But what is changing is the occupancy of the apartments, the build-out of the orchards. So how has that build-out of the orchards compared to what they anticipated? A couple of years ago, they were 50% built out. What are they today? Are they 60%? Are they 90%? If they're 90% built out and they didn't anticipate for that, and the numbers are still this low, we can infer that those higher numbers are not accurate. They're going to be much lower
Right, because there's a lot riding on these
in the
numbers.
outlying years. You follow that logic? I mean,
But then you're inferring that.
I don't know what you're gonna do with it.
Exactly. I'm not following.
And for this year's budget, there may be minimal impact, but this has been for quite a few years, trying to get a handle on how are we really calculating or projecting student populations. So it's an issue that's been there for quite some time. Right now, trying to figure out what the impact of next year is, yes, it should be, all your lines are fairly small and they're all going down, so the expectation should be you're not adding resources to cover this population, but you're projecting growth in the future.
And we're trying to be aligned with that. I mean, we reduce 11 positions,
Yeah.
next year with still a slight, with reduction. But if that population does go up, I'm gonna be sitting in front of your, hopefully, who's down the road and saying, we need to add a few more staff here because the number is creeping up over 3,000.
It's
That's
just-
our job to fluctuate with that.
I think it's the peel in the back of the onion kind of thing, is that when you start looking at data and analyzing data, when it starts not making sense, then you start asking more and more questions, right? And you start asking more questions to try to understand it. And when there's inconsistencies, you start asking, how accurate is the data that I'm looking at and analyzing? And if it's inconsistent, then what am I looking at it for? I don't know what I'm basing a decision on. So I think that's where some of the apprehension, I don't mean to put words in everybody else's mouth, but I think that's kind of where some of the apprehension comes from.
I think you said it well.
Okay, I'll put words in
So
everybody's mouth.
are we, you understand what's being asked?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yes.
Perfect. I have a couple more questions and then I'll be done, so thank you. You showed numbers in here, I won't find it, but what we're paying our security folks and what other districts are paying. Is your intention to
Not
close the
direct.
gap?
No, not over time, over the next couple of years to try and close the gap.
So the money you put in the budget for security resources is reflective of an incremental increase in their salaries, not the full $9 an hour,
$1.
$1 an hour. Are we doing anything with the space formerly occupied by Learn? Do we have plans or anything?
Well, there's a lot of different options being kicked around. As of right now, some of our discussions at the Board of Ed level have been trying to work to expand preschool and potentially generate, some more revenue if it's a creative program that expands, but also looking at our integrated program. I think we have to keep our options open for some potential, small rentals that might come in. Nobody has approached us like Learn, looking for, a full wing of classrooms.
Do we have a specific plan in place with goals to try to get that place revenue generating?
We haven't
or-
gotten there yet. We're gonna get through redistricting, we're gonna get through the school projects. That's on our bucket list to start looking at for
Would
next
it,
year.
would you be willing to commit to a date to start thinking about it in detail? I'm not looking for answers,
Yeah.
but, like, could
In
you
the
throw a
fall,
dart
definitely.
out?
In the
Okay,
fall,
so in
absolutely.
September, you're gonna start looking at that, so for next year.
October.
October,
Yeah.
so that potentially by the next school year, we can be in a position to generate some revenue there, possibly.
Possibly.
Okay, that's fine. I
Yep.
just want you to start
Yeah, we-
thinking about it. It's very easy
Absolutely.
to have a lot,
What we don't wanna do is leave that wing vacant.
Right.
For sure, so.
Could have put the safety complex, no.
oh, my God, quiet. So I'm a little uneducated in education. Can you help me understand what occupational therapists do for 3-year-olds?
Occupational therapy, motor movements,